This is Franchise Today, brought to you by FRM Solutions, providers of the best-in-class software solutions for franchise relationship management. Franchise Today is your destination for weekly information, conversations, and interviews with accomplished industry leaders, all of whom share best practices for sustainable growth and sensible franchising. Here now, your host, Stan Friedman, to kick off this week's podcast.
It's Wednesday, September 16th. I'm Stan Friedman, and this is Franchise Today. Many thanks to last week's guest, all the way from the UK, Peter Daly-Dixon, author of Franchising Freedom. My thanks go out to Peter on a couple of fronts. One, for joining us last week and talking about the book, but moreover, for inviting me to author the foreword for this best-selling Amazon hit on 3 continents. So, Peter, once again, my humble thanks. So, when I closed out last week's program, I invited you to come back today to hear from another great franchising favorite, former undercover boss, Jeff Duden. But a shift in scheduling has pushed that interview out for one more week. So, Jeff will be here next Wednesday, and in his place today, we'll be speaking with another really great guy that I have come to know over the years. He is a wine connoisseur, a very smart and savvy businessman, fellow member of the IFA Supplier Forum Board, and the founder, president, and CEO of Clarity Voice. When I return in 2 minutes or less, I'll be joined by Gary Goerke.
Franchise Today will be right back, but first, a word from our sponsors.
We are all familiar with Vistage, YPO, and EO. Well, now comes Zor Forum, a somewhat similar type of executive group, but this one comes with a twist. Zor Forum groups are exclusively for franchisors. Imagine a peer group for sharing and networking on a platform built exclusively for franchise executives. Zor Forum members are afforded unparalleled access to best practices and some of the brightest minds within the franchising world through regular meetings and a dedicated communications platform. In this post-COVID world, a franchise-specific mastermind or peer group is an endeavor worth making time for. Zor Forum groups of 6 to 10 will bring leaders together that are in similar situations, but with exclusivity in terms of their competitive sets, so that each can openly help others benefit from their respective knowledge, perspective, and experience, with no fear of competitive loss. Network, learn, strategize, and remain motivated along your journey. Join a peer group, not just any peer group. Join the only one designed for emerging franchisors. Join Zor Forum. Learn more at zorforum.org. That's www.zorforum.org. Gary Goerke is one of the world's foremost experts on pinpointing emerging technologies that will make a difference in small and medium business profitability. A recognized entrepreneur, Gary combines his passion for technology and his commitment to free enterprise by serving the franchising, small business, and auto dealership communities. A leading evangelist for business voice-over IP, today, Gary is focused on the success of independent franchise owners and their franchisor partners. In 2005, he created Clarity Voice when he identified a technology gap between available and applied technologies in communication services used by small and medium franchised businesses. With patented technology, Gary introduced Clarity's franchise phones, a service provided to the franchising world. Clarity is also the parent to Phone System in a Box, a small and medium voice-over IP service. Gary Goerke, welcome to Franchise Today.
Hi, Stan. It's great to be here. I appreciate the invitation. And as always, it's good to be able to spend some time with you, albeit here we are virtual.
Yeah, really. It feels a lot different, Gary. I got to tell you, when we can get together and have a glass of wine and a conversation and be face-to-face, nothing on a Zoom call or anything that of any nature can change that personal networking touch.
Without a doubt. And I've missed it. For me, it's been since March when I was at my last franchising event, at least in-person franchising event. And I miss my franchise family, Stan, and it's great to stay connected virtually, but there's nothing that surpasses that, face-to-face, looking somebody in the eye and feeling the warmth of their smile.
Even if it is over a franchise phone, I couldn't agree with you more. And we're going to talk more about franchise phones and Clarity and everything that you're all about, Gary, but we've got to start the interview the way I start them all, and that's for you to tell the audience how franchising found you.
How franchising found me? Well, with a kerplunk. Stan, leading up to that franchise introduction, I had been in corporate America and information technology for almost 20 years. I didn't start Clarity until I was in my late 30s, almost my 40th birthday. So I had established a career through then. And while I was working in information technology, I was constantly looking for my ticket out. And through my whole career, while I had my profession, I was always looking for some side gig, whether it was back in college, I ran ski trips with the college or consulting small businesses on IT needs or doing direct sales through multi-level marketing. Whatever it was at the time, I was looking for something more than what my job and career could provide. And so in 2005, I started Clarity. I was working as an IT director for a publicly traded real estate company. And for the first 6 months, I figured this was going to be another side gig, just like everything else. And I needed to add some income to help fund the kids' tuition. And it was about 6 months later that the enormity of the opportunity hit me and made that decision to mortgage the house and run up the credit cards, quit my job and go all in. That big decision, the entrepreneurial seizure, I call it. And franchising came about early on, but it was a few years into the founding of the business that I went to church and was at a business owners roundtable, and I met this guy by the name of David McKinnon. And I asked David out to lunch to pitch him about being an advisor. I didn't know what I was doing and was seeking out people who had successful business enterprises to provide guidance. And I didn't know at the time that David was in franchising. I, like most people in franchising, before franchising, didn't know what it was. They thought it was French fries and golden arches. But as it turned out, I learned that David, as being the founder of Service Brands International, which is a holding company for Molly Maid and Mr. Handyman, 1-800 Dry Clean, and a few other brands through its time. Service Brands is now part of Neighborly. Neighborly acquired them a few years ago. But David had this franchising background. That still wasn't where I got the introduction to franchising, though, because it was a year later, after David was one of my advisors, that franchising happened. And David and I were out to lunch. We came back and he invited me into his office. And as we're walking back to his desk, he stops into the office of one of his presidents, one of his brand presidents. Jim Evers is the gentleman's name, and it was 1-800 Dry Cleaning. And I sat down with Jim and started explaining to him about what Clarity did as a voice over IP provider and some ideas I had. And he stopped me, and I thought he was going to tell me to get out, that he had enough, but instead, he said, "Gary, you have what every franchisor in the world wants." And I remember I looked at him with saucer-wide eyes, and I said something like, "Oh, yeah, what?" And he proceeded to explain how I had accidentally discovered a benefit of our system and the way that we administer and work with businesses that protected the franchisor's brand, and that was of interest to every franchise, including the one that he was currently president of.
What year was this, Gary? This was 2001.
I believe it's 2008.
You were 3 years into the development of your brand, Clarity Voice, and we're going to talk more and give the backstory of what Clarity really does. But the association with franchising, that would have been about 3 years later in this conversation with Mr. Evers would have been in about 08 or 09.
Yeah, about 3 years later, and just walking down the hallway randomly. Clarity was growing. I wouldn't say we were succeeding. We were looking for our niche and our footing and how to differentiate ourselves in a very crowded, competitive marketplace. And that's when franchising, which has become our niche, found me, Dan.
So that answers that question. And then the next question that it begs is to explain a little bit about what Clarity does and how it protects brands and how important those all-important phone numbers are for a franchisor to be able to maintain control of. So that would have been the hook for me that I would have heard based on the conversation you just described. That's the way a brand gets protected, by not losing a phone number if they lose a franchisee or a unit.
That's right. In 2008, Stan, it was much simpler than it is now. And what we provide to franchisors, it is much greater today, much wider than what we did in 2008. But in 2008, the concept was simple, that a franchisor wants to protect their brand and everything that's tied to the brand. So if I use 1-800 Dry Clean or Molly Maid is also one of our customers that was part of that service brand umbrella and an early franchisor we worked with, they were interested that in the event of a franchisee termination, and it could be for non-performance or it could be simply the sale of the franchise territory to a new owner, they wanted to make sure that the telephone number, which was published throughout the world in all different mediums, from Valpak advertisements to magnetic stickies and refrigerators, that phone number would stay in control of the franchisor, so that the brand integrity that was tied to that number would always be under the franchisor's control. The way that franchisors had tried to do this or accomplish this prior to 2008 would be to either take on the responsibility and pay the phone bill for all of their franchisees, which is an administrative nightmare among other problems it creates, or they'd simply have a legal document and insert it in their franchise agreement. But that became a legal matter that had to be potentially litigated if there was any type of termination event or situation where a phone number needed to be transferred. So by a franchisor recommending our service to be used by their franchisees, we would protect and make sure that any number transfers were seamless without a legal battle, without the franchisor having to take on a large financial commitment or financial liability. Gave them peace of mind that never would they have to get into a situation where they were chasing after a phone number to get it back so that it would protect or stay with the brand.
And back in '08, telephone numbers probably rose to a larger or a higher level of importance in the minds of some than we've seen over the past 10 years, that text messaging has displaced email and voice conversations with especially millennials and younger. Voice conversations just hasn't been that important to them. But then along comes something called COVID-19, which I think has probably given many people whiplash in terms of how important food to go and ordering online and by phone for pickup has become again. We're going to talk more about COVID-19 and its impact on your business, Gary, after we take a break. But before we go there, I noticed looking on your website that your services provided opportunities for many different verticals in or out of franchising by virtue of categories like food or pizza or service businesses. And franchising to me seems like it's just the other way around. Franchising is the big catch-all of many of those verticals. So it looked like you have a dual-pronged approach to how you can contact people either by virtue of a point of distribution like a franchise location, whatever the brand, or by category specific. Is that correct?
Well, because we're a closely held company, we can choose the businesses, categories, and type of businesses that we want to do business with. And certainly we've chosen categories and business structures where we can have the most impact. So the way that franchising fits in there, and you're right, Stan, franchising encompasses many categories: home services, health services, business services, QSR, quick serve restaurants, among others. But what I've always loved about franchising is that the franchisee, that owner of the franchise, is the person or the couple that's pursuing their American dream, and that they're putting in their drive and being tenacious and work ethic and their hopes and prayers that they'll have a piece of the American dream and have success. I love being able to serve those types of people. When we as a company can provide a service that helps the franchisee, I get the satisfaction not just of an economic transaction, but I get the satisfaction that I helped that family move closer to their dream. So that's why franchising is our focus and not just the business categories.
Well, that's part of what I like about you so much, Gary, I guess, is that you've got that same spot in your heart that I've got in mine. We're talking to Gary Goerke. He's the CEO and president of Clarity Voice. Many of you know him through his franchise phones services offered through Clarity. And we're going to come back with Gary on the other side of our break. And we're going to talk about the impact of COVID-19, not just on business in general, but how it has made a massive difference in the importance of communication between franchisors, franchisees, and their customer base. And we're going to touch on all of that through the eyes of Gary Goerke when we come back. Don't go anywhere.
Franchise Today will be right back. But first, a word from our sponsors.
This portion of Franchise Today is brought to you by Zoracle, providers of spot-on profiles, the gold standard of assessment tools that assure you're selecting the right franchisees every time. Unlike DISC or others that simply gauge personality or communication styles, Zoracle's spot-on assessments are all franchise-specific and based upon 7 sciences that nail the results each and every time. Your prospects simply answer a few questions online, and like magic, Zoracle's algorithms scientifically slice, dice, and analyze their thresholds for risk, their business acumen, and even their propensity for single or multi-unit ownership. Zoracle's spot-on analysis is like having a crystal ball, but there's no hoodoo here. It's all based upon science that flawlessly determines franchisee, franchisor compatibility, and accurately predicts performance. Why don't you schedule a demo today and take a complimentary look and see for yourself? It's the closest thing to a sure thing. Zoracle, spot-on assessments based on science, but delivering results that seem simply magical. Check them out at www.zoracleprofiles.com. And we continue our conversation with Gary Goerke, President and CEO, founder of Clarity Voice. And we were taking a path toward the COVID-19 impact on franchising and franchise communications and communications at all levels during this pandemic. And post-pandemic, we're taking a look and a glimpse ahead through the eyes of Gary's wisdom to talk about where franchisors need to be heading to be able to stay on top of their games post-COVID. And Gary, that's a conversation all by itself, but why don't you lead us off with some thoughts?
It is, Dan. And with any crisis, you're either going to see it as an opportunity to move forward or allow fear to stop you and cause you to hunker down. And in business, it's a truism that if you're not moving forward, you're moving backwards. There's no such thing as just hunkering down and staying stable. Even when the world is in the type of chaos that it is right now, you have to look for a path forward and make forward progress. I see this for ourselves, and I see other savvy businesses using this time as an opportunity to upgrade their technology. So we now have been forced into doing business virtually. And most businesses that are still here as we're talking in September are in existence because they've been able to embrace and use technology to virtualize. But it's also an opportunity to evaluate sales and administration and finance and the technology that can propel you into the next decade, into the 20s, as we come out of COVID, that you as a business are further ahead. So for us, Clarity offers the service, the technology that helps franchisees work virtually. So we have, of course, voice. And the key to virtualizing voice is when a customer calls you, that phone call finds you wherever you're at, whatever device you're on, whether it's a phone that's on your desk or your smartphone or even your computer. That call and that caller can find you. It's texting, which best practice is build a relationship with your customer and maintain that relationship through text. It's less intrusive to the customer to send them a text message because they can respond in their own timing, but it's more personal than email, which email has been relegated to either advertising, we know, with spam, or for official correspondence. But text still has that personal feel to it. So use text and business texting to maintain the relationship with your customers and strengthen that relationship. And we also have, as an organization, we provide video conferencing and video webinars. So many people are using Zoom. We have a similar technology. It's our own technology that is built right into our platform. And we find that franchisees that are using our service use this video platform to communicate with their team, with their employees, to communicate with their home office, and even to be able to communicate with their customers. Again, it's about taking today's crisis and using it to move forward in a technological fashion. Stan, we were chatting during the break, and I mentioned how one of the, I would say, errors that I see business leaders, franchise leaders make is that they delegate their vision down to, in our case with technology, they delegate down to IT. And your information technology person or group, or even your operations group, are in place to carry out your vision, not to make it. They can go in whatever direction you send them in. They can do a complete analysis. They can vet an opportunity or vendor or a supplier or an idea, but they don't have the vision that if everything comes together as the sales pitch presents, what that truly means for your organization. It's easy for myself. I get lazy and I want to just ask somebody else to handle it and expect, I find otherwise, but I expect that it's going to turn out on the other side just as I had wanted. But in reality, if I want a vision that I have in my head to be successful, carried out, I have to first paint the vision and give that to my operations people or IT people for them to carry it forward.
I think the all-important nugget that you're dropping here, Gary, for the audience is twofold. One is more now than ever, leadership and the provision of leadership as opposed to just management is post-COVID as important as anything else you can do. More important than ever that you continue to have the steady hands of leadership and build the trust with your personnel and with your customers. And if technology is part of that solution and you're not availing yourself of it, don't turn that responsibility over to an IT person without first delivering to him and with it what your vision is with, and no pun intended, but with clarity, right?
That's right. To use an analogy, during this COVID crisis, it's like running across a partially frozen pond. As long as you're moving fast, you'll get to the other side. But if you slow down, you're going to end up in the water. You have to execute fast. And the only way you can execute fast as a leader is to take the time, paint the vision, and then hand the vision off to operations or IT to execute. But if you just relegate the vision casting, the future planning, and that decision to IT or operations, you're going to go through the ice and you're going to drown.
Gary, what are some of the things that franchisors, be they emerging and startup or larger concepts that are growing, what are some of the immediate things that they should be looking at in technology right now? What are the must-dos as opposed to that would feel good to have?
Yeah, I think the first and foremost is anything that helps you virtualize your team and the execution of your business. So that would be going to the cloud, which simply means outside internet-based hosted for all of your key systems. So that's your CRM should be cloud-based and modern. Your communications, your financial systems, your accounting should be, again, cloud-based so that you can have your team working from anywhere just as effectively as if they were in the office. That's a trend, Stan, that's going to continue. Everything I've seen and read, it's estimated that 40 to 50% of all employees that are currently able to work from home are going to continue to work from home post-pandemic. So now's the time to prepare for that, all of us in the business world.
Gary, who is too small to have a conversation with clarity? Is there anybody in this audience that is going to listen to this conversation and walk away saying that sounds great, but that's probably above my ability to action at this point in time? Is there anybody that you can't help somehow at this stage of their development?
Only if they're small-minded and they think that they have all the answers. But size isn't what determines that, Stan. So we love franchising, and we'd love to talk to any franchisor, whether they're emerging, and we have plenty of emerging franchisors with just a handful of units that we work with, up to the largest franchise systems in the space. We work with the entire breadth.
And so if somebody were to want to find out more, what's the best vehicle for them to do so?
Start by looking at our website, which is clarityvoice.com. That's CLARITYVOICE.com. And the person you'd want to speak with would be Rosemary Paris, and she can be contacted at 800-676-3995. Or I would love to talk with any franchisor, and I'll get you to the right person who can actually help you out. But I'd love the opportunity to meet you, albeit virtually. And my direct number is 248-327-4392. That rings right to me. I'd love to hear from you.
What about an email address for you, Gary?
I can be reached at garyg@clarityvoice.com.
All right. Last question of the day. What question didn't I ask you, Gary, that you wished I might have?
Dan, I've been dying to share a secret for business success that I recently learned, and it's cost me $75,000. And figured the way I can get my value out of that is by sharing it and using it. Would you like to know what the secret is, Stan?
Gary, would my audience like to know what the secret is the greater question. Absolutely.
Question in your mind should never be, how do I get something done? But who can get this done? Whether it's somebody in your organization or external to your organization, look for the specialists who can take your vision and run with it.
That's some sage advice, my friend.
I didn't come up with it, but it is from a sage.
I appreciate you sharing it here, Gary. I can't wait to see you back on the trail. Right now, I can't tell when that's going to be. You and I are both members of the IFA Supplier Board. We had a conversation last week with our leadership telling us that we're not quite certain when lights are going to go back on again for conventions or conferences, but it can happen soon enough for me, my friend. I've enjoyed the sabbatical, but only to a point.
I'm ready to get back and meet with people face to face too, and I know it's only a matter of time. I have confidence that we shall see each other face to face once again.
And I wanted to just drop in here, as we should have done probably closer to the front of the show, how it is you and I actually first met. I was looking to see how far back we go, and it looks like it was 2013 when we were brought together by the one and only bridge builder, Jerry Darnell.
So Dave McKinnon introduced me to Jerry Darnell. Again, having lunch with David, and we were talking about building Clarity Sales, and he said, do you know Jerry Darnell? He'll connect you with everybody in franchising. And it was from that meeting that I met Jerry, and Jerry introduced me to you and, hundreds of leaders in the franchising world.
Well, and look at you now. You're one of them.
Well, I just sit on the sidelines and try to glean nuggets from all of you greats, Stan.
Well, we all do the same thing, Gary. It's a school of lifelong learning, and I'm really happy that you have shared some of that with our audience here today. Gary Goerke, President and CEO, founder of Clarity Voice. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Stan. Look forward to seeing you soon.
Well, I hope you enjoyed hearing from Gary as much as I enjoyed talking with him. As always, he's more than willing to share, and in fact, he does so passionately. Next week, yet another passionate franchising friend, author, undercover boss, and franchising pro. Yes, Jeff Dudan will be here as promised, just a week later than anticipated. So until then, keep doing the best you can as we all keep pushing through this corona thing together. I'm Stan Friedman, wishing you the best, the very best of all things franchising, and Franchise Today is out.
Franchise Today is a production of FRM Solutions, providing best-in-class CRM tools to empower relationships with prospective and existing franchisees. No excuses, just solutions. Find them online at frmsolutions.com. Join Stan every Wednesday at noon Eastern for another live episode of Franchise Today. Or, as always, download episodes on demand at blogtalkradio.com or iTunes.
When it's PCS time, you know the drill. Pack, research the new base, get the kids in school, because family supports family. At American Public University, we support military families with flexible, affordable online education that moves with you. As a military spouse, your tuition rate is the same as your partner's, just $250 per credit hour. American Public University, education that moves with you. Learn more at apu.apus.edu/military.